Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining this session on AI in organization design. I'm Heather Stevens. I work with the European Organization Design Forum, where we bring you conversations and discussions with experts and practitioners a couple times a month in this platform on trending topics in org design, and this is a big one. Before we get started, I want to let everybody know that the EODF's Autumn Fast Track Masterclass is coming up. It will be in October, and there's still room to register for your seat. So this round of the masterclass is going to happen. It's scheduled for a time that is suitable for people in Europe when we get off of work, or also to accommodate people in US time zones. So it is 6 consecutive weeks with a session every week. And it will start at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern time, and 6 p.m. Central European time. The masterclass does contribute towards the CODP, the Certified Org Design Practitioner certification. So if you're interested in learning a little more about org design and kind of the really practical elements, then please check it out on our website, eodf.eu. The link is also down here on the screen for where you can register, and we do regular promotion of it here on LinkedIn as well. All right, so let's get started in the topic of the day. We have a really interesting couple of guests today to discuss AI and org design. One of them you might know if you listen to the Org Design podcast, Damian Bramanis, who is also an EODF trustee and the co-founder of Functionally, a SaaS platform that helps organizations design their future with clarity and agility. Damian is passionate about org design and has described himself as kind of an anthropologist of org designers, gathering insights over the years of interviewing org design practitioners on his podcast. We also have Andrew Zielinski today. Andrew is an organizational transformation expert who advises executive teams on delivering sustainable change across a variety of industries and geographies. He's worked as a management consultant for many years, and he was also responsible for leading the rollout of Deutsche Bank's AI strategy. Andrew has a lot of insights to share about trends and data when it comes to the impact of AI on the world of work and org development. So we have a great couple of guests today. And there
Hey,
they are.
Heather.
Ian
Hello.
and Andrew.
Hi,
Thank
how
you
you
for joining us.
doing?
So as we're talking to those in the audience, if you have any questions, please add them into the comments and we'll pick them up as we see kind of through the course of the conversation. All right, so let's get started. So let's start with kind of a broad view. I want to ask both of you, what are the kind of trends and research and developments that you see when it comes to how organizations are approaching and leveraging and coping with AI?
Great. I'm happy to kick off there. So there's sort of like the current day, what we know, and then there's sort of where do we go from here. But what we already know is that the vast majority, so over 90% of jobs, will be significantly impacted by AI based on the technology that already exists in the world today. So as that technology permeates out and starts to be used and adapted in different ways, it will affect those jobs. But that doesn't mean replacing a job. It means that some of the activities that people do can be performed by AI. So we're looking at somewhere between 20 to 60% of somebody's activities might be performed by AI. And so that's where we're seeing that kind of level of change that's kind of baked in already. But into the future, there's that we can sort of predict further ahead based on where we're seeing AI evolving. And we know that very, very fast, there's new emergent capabilities. And so that they'll continuously change. What I see that means is that there's kind of a few big, really seismic shifts that we're on the brink of those seismic shifts happening. And the first of those is I see that the vast majority of sort of white collar desk jobs will be completely transformed as the activities they do shift from human to AI. And that will be a bigger change than what we've seen in modern history. The second one is that I see that it won't be jobs getting replaced, but it will be humans and AI working together in collaboration to be able to achieve that. And the third thing that I see is that AI is going to keep developing these greater and greater capabilities, and right now they're being developed by humans, but as AI gets able to develop capabilities itself, they'll accelerate even further. And so the idea of a fixed org design or a fixed job will become out of date and require change very, very fast.
And Andrew, what do you think? Is that
yeah? So I'm gonna maybe I appreciate getting right into the jobs, but I think taking a bit of a macro view. So I'm gonna sort of extend the aperture a little bit.
Yep.
And just sort of think where we are right now. And, in some ways, just in the last, I don't know, let's say 12 months to 18 months, the AI game has changed. And that's not because there's more data and compute, but because the foundation models are more prevalent and more powerful. So we think about, GPT series from OpenAI, we think about Llama from Meta, Claude from Anthropic, Palm and Gemini from Google. They are just, they're out there and they're getting better and better. So you've got those foundation models that organizations, companies, people can build on, that didn't exist before, November 2022. Then you've got the smaller models, which are getting better. So that means that they're lowering cost, which leads to broader and faster adoption. The other thing that is really clear is that the benefits from AI are still mostly unrealized. So there's all this promise, and if you're familiar with Gartner hype cycle, we're kind of in we're entering the trough of disillusionment if we're not already well at the bottom of it. Certainly from a lot of people, a lot of executives. There's still a lot of rejection from people versus embracing it. That picture is evolving, and I think it'll continue to evolve. To the point where more people embrace it than reject it, and I think that will happen more quickly than with a lot of other technologies and historical technologies. Regulation is being talked about, but it's unclear how far it will go. I think there was a relative amount of certainty, or it felt like there was some certainty in how regulation was going to evolve. Certainly in, let's say, the U.S., in Europe, other sort of Western countries, Western areas. That's kind of changing right now, so it's a little bit uncertain. And then the other thing, which I just feel it's like every time I have a conversation about this now, everybody's talking about agents and agentic solutions. Like that's the new rage. So I think to me that's kind of big picture what some of the trends are.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on something that you said there, Andrew, which is about the cost of AI dropping, and we see, because it's really, really clear the performance of AI improving. And if we look back 6 months or 12 months or 2 years, that trajectory shows massive improvements. But at the same time, the cost is actually dropping dramatically. And so there's two kind of things at play. One of those is the algorithms are getting better and better and better to be able to perform AI inference with less hardware that needed. And then the second one of those is that the hardware itself is becoming far cheaper and far more capable. And so what we think of as the cost of AI today is dropping a lot. And what that means for where we are in 2, 3, 4 years time, I think will be quite incredible.
Yeah, and I think that point about the cost dropping, it's the, do you need a GPT-4 and all of its power for most of the things that organizations need to do? And the answer is no. So it's the development of these smaller models, which are just lower cost and require less compute, et cetera.
Yeah.
All right. So you said a little bit, I think, Andrew, you said you expect this to be adopted more quickly than other technologies in the past. Embraced. That's a good distinction. Can you dig a little bit into that? Why do you think that is? How do you think that's going to lay out across different kind of roles and sectors? Like, can you maybe give examples of how you see this playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, number one is necessity. This is, businesses, kind of everyone's all in on AI. And because of that, most companies, most of the technology that we use just on a day-to-day basis is building AI into it. So we're all already using AI. If we're using technology, we're already using AI. So that's number one. So I think that the embracing bit of, if you're unfamiliar with something, then you are more likely to reject it. So the more familiar people get with it, the more they'll embrace it and kind of accept it. So I think that's probably the biggest factor there.
Yeah, it definitely seems that we're already seeing the adoption at a rapid rate. So I think ChatGPT right now is the 5th most visited website on Earth. And it's not very far behind jumping up to the 3rd most visited website on Earth, leapfrogging Instagram and Facebook. So that level of adoption is already, and you could call it embracing, is already one of the fastest technologies that we've seen.
Yeah. And Heather, I don't know, I think there might have been a second part to your question.
There was. I was wondering how you think this might play out across different sort of specific roles or maybe sectors of how that kind of will develop and evolve, in your opinion.
Yeah, so I mean, I sort of try to be as sort of data based and data, foundation of data as possible. And I really like, I think it's a little bit conservative in some ways, but the World Economic Forum jobs report, the Future of Jobs report that they publish, I think it's every year. And I think the most recent one, so Damian, you gave some figures, which were slightly higher probably than the ones that the World Economic Forum would quote, but again, I think they're a little more conservative. Because I personally am of the view that pretty much every job in every industry everywhere will be affected in some way, shape, or form by AI. So that's kind of the big picture for me. But what the WEF says is that 39% of core job skills will change by 2030. And that's change, not the eliminated, right? So you've got some that are going to be reducing. So things like, clerical, secretarial roles, data entry and processing, any sort of manual routine tasks that don't really require human judgment. Those are the things that are on the downward trend. Those things that are on the upward trend, which I think is potentially interesting for this audience and sort of org designers and how you think about workforce planning. What's on the uptick is the need for analytical thinking and innovation, for AI and big data literacy. Creative thinking and problem solving is another, I think, fairly big one. Tech literacy, and then really broadly kind of lifelong learning and self-management. So that's the, if I think about the core skills, let's say, and then you've got the competencies that are changing. So if you think about the emerging competencies that are coming out, it would be things like managing AI and hybrid teams, ethical decision-making in tech environments, human and machine collaboration, digital communications, remote leadership. So those are the types of things that I'm certainly seeing, and some of the data is bearing out, or at least that's what it's forecasting. The other thing is that 21% of current, this is again World Economic Forum most recent Future of Jobs report, 21% of current jobs will disappear or be created, newly created by 2030. And where it's going to have the biggest impact, if you sort of think about it from an industry perspective, it's anticipated that it'll be financial services, like more than 50% of the jobs in financial services will be affected. Energy, 43%. Retail 34%, and then public sector, health, utilities, industrial, chemicals between sort of 25 and 30%. So it's not insignificant.
Yeah. I just wanted to jump on. There were a couple of questions about the reducing cost and what that means. The way that I think about that is we're in the era that silicon computers were back in the 1970s with a few big mainframes. And as the cost of compute came down, there's computers on your wrist, there's computers in your pocket. You've probably got 5 of them on the desk in front of you. There's this proliferation of a computer, even where you don't expect it. People have got a toothbrush in their, a computer in their toothbrush. And so that as the cost comes down, computers and silicon has just gone everywhere. And so I think that we're going to see the same thing with AI, is that as the cost per token drops, AI can be used or for so many different purposes that we wouldn't even consider doing it today. And so while the unit cost is decreasing dramatically, even orders of magnitude, the total expenditure on AI is increasing, and it's going to increase as well. So at the same time, the world's total spend on compute power has increased. In the future, a factory could well be an AI factory where there's just enormous data centers full of lots and lots of GPUs. And per query, per thing that you do, it might be far, far cheaper, but the total cost spent on that could be far more than we spend today.
And maybe to just pick up on that, on the cost, but there's also a question about energy costs. We don't want to have that conversation because that's a whole different topic. But I think that the cost of the models in current energy prices are actually becoming less. But I think over time, the consumption of energy and the need for energy and the pulling of energy obviously will increase demand for energy overall, which will push up prices. I think is some innovation that's happening in that sector that I'm anticipating will address some of that.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a question that kind of leads us a little bit back into the way people are affected or will be affected. And the question is, how do those figures of jobs being affected by AI compare with, say, the emergence of the internet or other kind of paradigm shifting technologies in the other decades?
So I personally feel like we're in the 1990s when it comes to the internet. There's a lot of speculation and projection and hype and things like that. And there's a general sense of, we know, I'm definitely aging myself here. Maybe the gray hair's already done that. But we definitely know that there's going to be an enormous impact, but how the world will look in a few decades is something that it's quite hard to guess at. And so what the information superhighway was back then is what AI and large language models are today. We sort of see this level of change that's ahead of us. We can see the trends that are still reasonably small, but are growing exponentially, and where they're going to go. And there's sort of this land of opportunity that's opening if people are on the forefront of that. And so the jobs being affected, I actually think that there's the sort of job, we can think of the jobs that are less affected. Some of the ones that I saw from research were nursing assistants and massage therapists and pile driver operators and those sorts of jobs. And that's similarly with activities, where the same sort of activities you'll be doing years from now. And then there's the activities which are massively impacted that will be they'll be done by, they're better done by AI, or cheaper or faster done by AI than by a human. And then the third thing is there's this opening up of activities that are growing in importance. And so those ones there are far more important in years to come. And so there's like do you want to be safe as a massage therapist, or do you want to be on the forefront of AI, or do you want to be somewhere in the middle where you're impacted?
I don't really have much to add on it. I don't have much data that I can give to support that. So.
All right. So maybe we can shift a little bit into thinking about how this affects the practice of org design. So we just got this question, how this influences the process of org design with leaders. I think, Andrew, you mentioned, or one of you mentioned a little while ago, this kind of rethinking how we approach workforce planning. I'm already seeing job listings pop up for things like robot and people operations lead, and that kind of shifting in competency for those sort of org development type of roles. How do you see that? What is already happening now in terms of the influence of how organizations are designed? And then what do you think is going to kind of happen in the future?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can start on that one. And, when I think about the effect on org designing, so workforce planning and org designing, the first question you have to ask is, do we know, or do we have a sense of where the organization is going? So where the strategy is going, and what the workforce makeup and the activities we do in the organization are going to look like, or how they're going to evolve over time. And you kind of, I think you don't necessarily have to answer that question, but you have to start to answer that question to think about how you apply the sort of org design lens. And I think if you sort of take a foundational approach, what I would say is that there are probably 4 key things that you can do in order to work with leaders or designing leaders in this environment. And I think number 1 is starting to create transparency regarding the changes in the workforce that you're in. So what are the changes that are coming your way? Then it's creating transparency regarding the existing skills versus the future skills that are there, the gaps that you have, defining how you address the gaps, and sort of putting some plans in place to develop those. Part of that, I think, is figuring out how you group those activities reasonably together into organizational units in order to be able to deliver on the operational objectives that you have in any organization that you're working in. And then the other 2 things are starting to deploy tools and upskilling and continuously developing the workforce. Because another stat that I really hang on to quite a lot is that the half-life of technical skills is less than 2.5 years. So what that means is we're going to need to replace 50% of the technology skills every 2 to 2.5 years in the organization, everywhere, basically. So there's a fundamentally different way you have to think about learning and development and how you structure your organization in order to build that in. And then I would say the last thing, which is no small thing, is there is, I think, going to be a fundamental redesign of career and development paths. And I think that's particularly relevant for org designers as you think about the organization today versus where it's going in the future.
Yeah, I actually see this as a unique opportunity for org designers, that there's going to be such massive demand for the outcomes of org design that the org design is immensely valuable. And the things that org designers have been saying for years we're going to hear them amplified in the years to come. And so we've all been saying it's great to invest in technology, but we have to invest in people as well as technology. And it's really, really important to make sure that our organization grows and evolves, not just as a sort of technology as a separate thing, but it's really an entire system. And so we need to focus on the why. Why are we doing this change, and what are the outcomes that we're hoping to get from this? And so I see one of the most important things is being really clear on accountabilities and outcomes as some of the most important anchors for the work that you do, and realizing that AI and humans are a collaboration, not kind of 2 separate things to think of separately, but completely intertwined in the workforce of the future.
Maybe another comment is, so the other thing, Heather, you didn't mention, I was also the global head of organization design for Deutsche Bank for a few years.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So which is, no problem, but I'm saying this from a point of experience, as opposed to just throwing it out there. I think that if you think about the kind of like what we as organization designers do, I don't think it fundamentally changes. I think the work in terms of the frame, the methodology, the approach is the same. It's everything that happens within it that is changing. So that's the stuff that we have to get our head around. But there are also, as you would expect, tools that are being developed by people with a focus on organization design and an interest in organization design to make that job easier for organization designers. So I think that we're already seeing kind of an uptick in the type of technology that's out there to support us in our jobs. But also, I think you're going to see a flurry of new stuff as well.
Yeah. I would say if you haven't sat down beside someone doing software development recently, and I dare say most people who do org design probably haven't, make sure you do that in the next couple of months, because it's absolutely fascinating. So coding tools now, AI coding tools or vibe coding is really incredible. The tools enable someone to just say what they want, use it in natural human language, and tools can be writing pages and pages of code, creating things, automatically testing them, saying that didn't work, throwing it away, writing it again, fixing their changes, checking it all, and preparing that work from go to woe, all in sort of not quite the blink of an eye, but very, very quickly. And that type of change has happened very quickly for software development. And it gives you sort of a glimpse of what might happen in other fields as well in the future.
And actually, to pick up on that, that kind of opens up this whole conversation about what's the risk, and it's actually related the risk of AI and some of the development in or evolution in jobs, which is also relevant to organization design and how leaders need to think about it. And I would say, number one is that there is or at least I see, a big risk of the hollowing out of some really core competencies, skills, and experience in most organizations. So if you take things like the example you just gave, Damian, where you've got developers and the tools that are available, whether it's GitHub Copilot or other Copilot things that allow you to develop, more like accelerate your experience development, et cetera, to do the coding, to do the translations from one language to another language, et cetera. What you're starting to do is you're starting to eliminate some of the more junior developers. And as a result, the question I've got is, who are going to be the senior developers in 20 years? And will they understand, or will you need the range of people to understand it, but you fundamentally need to have at least some level of understanding of what it takes to write code, what the code is doing, how to fix it where there are bugs, because you can't leave it all to the machines. But that's true in other areas as well. Things like, junior analysts or research analysts. In the legal profession, junior lawyers, associates. You're saying, oh, there's this big promise in, legal tech that we're no longer going to need paralegals. We're no longer going to need junior associates. But who are going to be the senior associates in the future? And how are you going to develop them? So that is something really interesting. I'll make another comment on that in a minute, but I'll let you pick up on
that. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think there was a piece in the Atlantic a month or two ago that was pointing out exactly this, that the unemployment rate of recent college grads is very high. And part of that is exactly because there are fewer entry-level positions of things like preparing reports and doing these kind of consulting tasks and that sort of stuff that would typically be done by a recent grad, but is now being done by an LLM. What does that sort of mean for the future? Sorry, I interrupted you, Damian. Go ahead.
No, that absolutely. But I do think that if you sit in front of the same computer that's got the same piece of AI coding technology on it, and you sat an experienced programmer and someone who's inexperienced and gave them the same task, you get wildly different outcomes. So even though it's the same AI doing the work, the experienced programmer straight away would notice you're approaching this problem in the wrong way. It would reframe the question. An experienced programmer would know, here's how I need to set out the work, and I should do it in this order and think about these things in these ways, and will quickly be able to eyeball, well, that doesn't look quite right, or this is poor quality. Whereas an inexperienced person might just accept the AI at face value and rush ahead with something which has got some serious flaws and not even realize that they're there. And so if I were hiring a developer today, I would rather have 2 very experienced developers with those AI coding tools rather than 10 juniors, because I feel that the 2 experienced developers would be able to do far more. And so that there is kind of the reason of that hollowing out of the juniors. There's a direct reason not to take people through that internship, apprenticeship, junior to senior progression, and instead just focus all of your efforts on experienced people.
Yeah, so and it's kind of a big question, but I'm wondering if the 2 of you have any ideas of how organizations, maybe society, can kind of hedge against that risk, because it feels like quite a significant thing. Where do the seniors come from if we don't have juniors?
Yeah, I mean, that goes directly to the point I made about the redesigning a career and development paths, because the question is, what does the senior legal associate or partner in a law firm look like in the future? What does a senior developer look like in the future? And what are the skills and the experiences that the people who are junior today need to have in order to build up to that? And the point about, there's a question about, won't juniors be doing different work, managing AI agents delivery? There will certainly be some of that, But I guess my caution of that is that I assume that most of us have had managers or have seen people who manage other people who don't really understand the work that the junior people are doing. And it becomes much riskier to have a situation like that when there is AI doing the work or an AI agent doing the work and a human managing it who doesn't understand what the agent is doing. So this question of how do you build that understanding and that experience so that you can have the building blocks to do the work that will need to be done 15, 20 years down the road, and allow your organization or the organization you're working in to continue to deliver what it needs to deliver. That I think is a big question. And I've certainly seen, and this goes possibly to the question of like, how do you work with senior leaders or how do you work with leaders on this? I've seen quite a few leaders who are really hasty in identifying that there is a significant or massive cost savings that they could have as a result of generative AI. I think there is cost savings that can be had, and I think there's some of it that you can deliver without increasing your risk massively. But I think there are some where we're a bit blind to the risk.
Mm. Yeah. How much will AI in org design be another voice in the room, a different voice in the room, or the only voice in the room? I certainly hope that AI is not the only voice in the room. I think that
I guarantee you someone will try it.
Yes. I actually had someone reach out to me saying that they read my blog post and they made a GPT of it, which is a little like both flattering and unnerving at the same time. Like, well, yeah. I have the background.
So on that question, I do really like to think that AI will be another voice in the room. And from what I've seen in all of the applications of AI so far, that AI makes very unique mistakes. And so it's sometimes, as a human, you can consider the AI's output to be naive or miss something very obvious. But other times it can be really insightful and identify things that you as a human didn't. And that's why I think that the idea of AI human collaboration really comes into its own, is that AI and humans make different sorts of mistakes and complement each other quite well. The way that I've actually think about this is when we look at chess, that the AI has learned to play chess very well and far better than humans, and humans supplement themselves by training against AI to learn unique things. And there's some very human patterns in chess where AI breaks the rules or does things unusual, not officially the rules, but breaks common sense. And they've led to thinking of new ways of approaching chess. And I do think that similarly in other disciplines, the AI and human working together will be able to outperform any AI and will be able to outperform any human. It's that collaboration that really makes sense. So in the will AI and org design be another voice in the room, or I actually think the different voice in the room is probably the right way to think about it, and a different voice in the room in the way that you'll outperform rather than as a human alone.
This is a tiny tangent, but your point about chess, one of the things, if no one's ever seen it, or if you haven't seen it, there's a documentary about AlphaGo, so DeepMind's AlphaGo, playing Lee Sedol. I would recommend anybody watch it. And my favorite thing about that is like mind-blowing. I think it was like move 37 in game 4, the world changed because of the creativity that the AI was applied. This was in 2016. So really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was just at the cusp of, was the AI making a mistake and doing something crazy, or was the AI having this real great flash of insight and it wasn't clear at the time which of those two things it was?
Yeah. I wanted to pick up on a question I think that's in the chat that may not have appeared on our screen yet, which I think is really important. There's a question about organizations needing to somehow provide experience apprenticeships, and particularly, oh, here it is, it's this one, and have experience to be able to correct the AI. I think it's really important to remember that generative AI, large language models, are probabilistic engines. They are not giving you answers. And, as my wife likes to say, they're giant BS machines. So if you don't know, and, in preparation for this, Damian and I were talking, and remember, Damian, you were saying that on a subject that you don't know very well, you look at it and say, oh, that seems like a reasonable answer.
Yeah.
Or a reasonable response. But on things that you know really well, you look at it and you say, oh, there's some stuff that's really wrong here. So if that's the case with what you're looking at, that is definitely the case with pretty much everything that's out there. What we also know is that it will get better and better, but it's still a probabilistic engine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting is that I think that is driving interesting behavior as well, is that you can feel like an expert at something by typing it into ChatGPT and looking at the response. But once it gets to the sort of the edge of its understanding, you can pass that without knowing that you've hit that point. The Andre Karpathy, who was one of the co-founders of OpenAI, calls it Swiss cheese, is that the knowledge of AI is like a Swiss cheese with all these holes in it. And the thing is, you just don't know when you've fallen down one of those holes, because the way that they train AI is it needs to give they train it with high quality responses where it's written by an expert and sounds really certain and assured. And so it learns that tone. And so the answers where it doesn't know also come across as certain and self-assured and pattern matched to something that sounds quite plausible.
And I think there's the point here about why, certainly in my mind, that the analytical thinking and probably critical thinking skills are and will continue to be so important. Because if you think about the corpus of information that a large language model is trained on, the more spurious information that is out there on the internet that it's being trained on, the sort of more spurious the response will be. So it's just this question of, how do you manage that, and how do you identify where the holes are?
Yeah, I do have to say, over the last few generations, the problems with hallucinations and problems with knowledge and things like that have been dramatically improved with the models that we have today. So I don't think those problems will ever go away, and we'll always need that expert to be able to evaluate whether something has been done right. But they're definitely getting smaller and smaller as problems.
Yeah. Heather, I don't know if you're going to pick up on this, but there was a question a few minutes ago about what are some of the new jobs, I think, that are going to be created.
Yeah, I was gonna. So Damian, I know you need to leave in a few minutes, but we have a question about the roles that don't exist today. Maybe we can also just expand a little bit on just kind of that general topic. What is a little more specific in terms of examples of things, maybe roles that don't exist today or competencies that people don't think about today.
Damian,
I've got a bit of a half answer, and so it's maybe Andrew, you can provide the other half. So my half answer is that I think there's two phases of this happening. So the first, if we think about sort of an AI assistant, which is what we're seeing today, where here's what my job needs to do, and there's I can get AI to help me. So I can get AI to draft that email for me, and it's a lot faster than writing it myself. And then at the end, I'm the one who hits send. And so different activities that I do, some of them can be made far better by using AI. And so I think in that sense, your role remains the same, and the reason for you doing what you need to do, that kind of outcome, the why is still there, but the what gets shuffled around. And so I actually believe that most jobs as they exist today, that why will still be around years from now. But the shuffling of activities within that will be quite different, prioritizing things that AI can't do and deprioritizing things that AI can do. So that's the first phase. The second phase, which is I think what this question is about what critical roles don't exist today, is where AI isn't an assistant anymore, where it's an agent, where rather than AI drafting emails for me, I can just put AI onto my inbox, and it will reply to every email in there without my intervention at all. It might escalate a couple of things to me and say, hey, these really need your attention. But where we can do that at a whole organization and say, please sit on the support mailbox and look after everything for me, or please answer the phones, or whatever it might be. And at that point in time, that's where I think the shape of jobs will change very significantly, because there'll be entire swathes of work which will be taken away. So I see from the research, the things that are at top of that list are number one is actually managers. Number one is actually managers, and professions like the IT services professions, and customer service, and sales. Those types of professions, there's definitely specific roles within those which can be performed by AI. The other half that I don't have an answer to is what are the critical things that become common in the future? So maybe you can shed some light on that, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a couple of thoughts on that. So I think what we're seeing is there's a rise of completely new needs, and in some ways new industries. And the one that comes most immediately to mind is the need for assurance of the AI that's working in any organization anywhere. So the UK, it's a little bit old now. I think it was a 2023 study maybe, that they looked at the rise of companies doing and sort of the rise of AI assurance and services provided in AI assurance. And they forecasted in the UK alone, a couple of years ago, it was going to be I think a £6 billion industry by 2030 or something like that. I think that's probably going to grow as well, but that's only in the UK. And the number of specialist firms that were doing AI assurance. So you think about fairness, making sure that the models are fair, they're transparent, they're accountable, they're explainable, and everything that comes around an AI model, that's going to be important. I think the audit firms, a lot of the consulting firms are going to be building up their practices in that, because it's going to be a huge moneymaker. Then it will become even more important for things where, there's currently a human in the loop, let's say. There needs to be, because their AI is making decisions, or at least making recommendations that affect human beings. So that's going to be something that I think is a big industry that's going to come out of this. I think there are others as well. Which I won't talk about now, but there certainly are others.
Yeah, that trust I see is really key to everything. Is that, can you trust and guarantee something? And so I see it similar to the shift that happened a couple of decades ago, where there used to be the newspapers, and the information used to be ultra valuable, and it drove these huge the media industry and universities and so on. And then with the internet, that shift meant that information became virtually free. And as the value of information dropped, the value of attention was what suddenly became very, 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 very valuable. And so companies like Facebook, for example, their entire business is based on getting attention, and so all the information is free, but the attention is what has the value. And so this shift with AI, as the value of creating digital content drops and drops and drops, the value of that trust in the content and being able to verify that it's actually true and correct is what increases. And like this, I can't see their name, but will sort of analog or human become more niche? I think that's exactly right. Is that the proliferation of, if 10,000 things are created by AI and one thing is created by human, well, then the human one naturally has that scarcity and value.
And I want to comment on that. I love this question, because I had a very long sort of conversation stroke argument about this, which is that it's like the human, the analog, that the human created thing will become artisanal, right? It's like the artisanal, like I've read the book. I've actually read a book. Therefore, my knowledge is, has much more value. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I notice I travel a lot, and I like to buy artwork, and there's a lot of AI artwork out there these days, and the value of something that a human created is then much more like with intent, and it tends to be more, at least I feel like it's more special, although there's a lot of really cool AI art out there, we'll say. All right. So I think, Damian, you need to drop off. I think that's also a very good place to end it. A little bit of optimism for the value of humans. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate both of you taking the time to do this, and I appreciate everyone in the audience who has taken time out of their day. Please join us again for another, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks very much.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you
Heather.
both. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.